no job too big or no job too small. Even when you start on a small job, sometimes you really don't understand how big it's going to get and what all it's going to go to. And sometimes when a person thinks a job is going to be a fairly small job, it winds up being a big job. So when you get to a big job, if you've got yourself positioned right and you got your strategic partners lined up correctly, then there's no job that's too big for you. You just need to line stuff up in the beginning so you can be prepared when the phone rings. One of the larger jobs that I've ever participated in is the Opryland Hotel and its 27 surrounding properties. Happened on May 10th, 2010. Uh, Cumberland River overflowed the levee and then breached the levee, and the levee bursted. So the basement and the first floor of the hotel went completely underwater, and the second floor went about 6 foot underwater. So quite a large job. And of course, if you've ever been to that hotel, quite a very large hotel. Drying started before the water was out of the parking lot and the building, and wound up with 70 or 80 deskants on it, and of course, subsequent generators and other stuff as well to be able to get the environment in there under control. Other jobs, this is in Naples, the Grand Hotel there. A job from a hurricane where wind had blown rain through the sliding doors and the windows. Um, and as you can see, a rather sizable building. Power demands were pretty high as far as powering up the building to run portable equipment, and uh, also had the added situation of no hotel rooms for employees and people to sleep in. No stores were open and stuff like that in the beginning because it was a hurricane job. And Hurricane Katrina in '02, we did help to provide equipment on several large jobs down there. The Bay St. Louis school system was one of the bigger ones that we did down there, and the Palace Casino was another large one. You never can tell when these large jobs are going to fall into your lap. We did all these jobs I'm talking about for another restoration contractor that just happened to look up on the job, and they would call and say, "Hey, we need some help. Can you come help us?" So the Nashville Christmas Day bombing was another a bunch of small projects. I think we did 8 of the stores downtown. Uh, Down there, they're all about 4 to 5 stories tall, but the footprint of each building itself was not that big. But when you combine them all together, they were pretty sizable. Bridgestone's Arena in downtown Nashville was pretty sizable. We did part of the work on that, provided part of the equipment. Some other people did some of the other equipment. So some of the stadiums and arenas were also affected. So several hotels. The Palace Casino probably is the second largest hotel, backed up by the Opryland Hotel, which is the largest non-gaming hotel in the world. So it when you start those kind of jobs, but those are for the large jobs. Small jobs, anything from 4 or 5 rooms in a hotel down to residential stuff. Just a lot of different stuff that you can do still on smaller type jobs. Um, so don't turn down a small job. A lot of times, like I said, it'll start small, and then as time goes on, the job just sort of grows and grows and grows. So uh, how much equipment do you put in the building? It usually takes a couple of days to figure that out. So you just keep doing your moisture mapping and getting your things done till you can get it figured out. So um, when you're drying with desiccant dryers, a lot of times your electricity demands need to come off of a generator. However, if you're drying with desiccant dryers that their heat source is diesel or propane, then they have a lot lower power requirements. Sometimes you can pull off building power. And anytime you're adding uh, tons of air movers, as in this slide, to a building and its power grid, I would have a commercial electrician to come out and make sure you balance the load. They'll have like three legs of electricity coming in, and you need to make sure you don't overload one and not put much strain on the other one at all. So you got to keep electricity in mind. This particular building had a parking garage in it that was underwater, just from the flood waters. The stairwells were offset. The escalators were flooded. Lots of people in and out of the building, and doors just remaining open pretty much all the time on it. So you run into a little bit of complexities on that. Have to deal with fire marshals and stuff also when you run into blocking the stairway or using the stairway to run tubing and stuff down. In this particular case, the fire marshal would not allow the stairwells to be used, so we had to use alternative methods of getting the air up to the 18 stories. We still use the stairways, we just couldn't block the stairways, so we had to get some good engineering in there and create how the airflow would work to get it all the way up through the building. The wasn't possible to use portables on it for two reasons. Number one, just wasn't enough portables available in the state at the time or in the country at the time because of the hurricane. And number two, that it would have overloaded the electrical system in the building. And we was running the building on a 2 meg generator, but we already had it at max capacity. So this is an assisted living facility where they had a pipe burst on the 14th floor in the mechanical room. Flooded a good bit of the building, but that's another example of a large job. And these jobs are coming by every day. If you're not going out and looking for them, you're not going to get them. So anytime you can get a job like these, you just need to make sure that you've got, like I said, your strategic alliances lined up. You got financing lined up for that, or a method of payment to be able to help with that, and that you put a plan together. Just put your plan together, write your plan, see what it looks like, and keep improving that plan each and every day. So a small job at Marina Jack actually was drying a houseboat. So we had a few low-profile air movers so we could get into the tight spaces, a couple of dehumidifiers, and the boat had a door come open during the hurricane and had pretty much saturated the inside of the boat, but they needed to get it dried out. And pardon me for calling it a boat, it was a yacht. Fits that criteria. So pretty nice yacht sitting down near Fort Myers, Florida, down in that area. So we brought portable drying equipment in. Very small job, but could lead to some big things. So you got to take the small ones and the big ones at the same time. So you'll run into some mini mansions that sometimes people say, well, I don't want to deal with houses, I just want to deal with commercial. But in fact, these houses are like a commercial because they're so large and so complex. But even when they're not really large, you still want to be able to deal with them and look at it in the respect that they're high end. They require the utmost of care to use, and the people expect good quality service. And if you can put out that service and get that done, then you may be the man for the job, even though it's not a great big job. Another picture of of a house out on near Fort Lauderdale. You can see the elevator shaft there in the picture on the left, and then they had the stairwell, the entry stairwell, the spiral staircase going in and under. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's a Maserati and a McCarran that is sitting in the living room that came through those big bay windows on the front there. So I had to figure out a way to get into that and to get all the mud out and the pavers out, and to be able to get drying going on into that. Also, was beginning to have some mold around, as it's been 2 or 3 weeks since the storm happened. So you want to look at that. You want to use Duskin or LGRs. Either one would work, but with the humidity of the bay and the lack of power, had absolutely no power there, then you sort of lean towards Duskin because it was pretty large. This is actually a fire job. We'll get away from water a minute. Actually a fire job just where they had soot and smoke smell come into this condominium complex in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, when they had the wildfires up there. So we were called by a restoration company out of Florida to come in and assist them in doing this. When my main project manager, Misty Jones, got on site, she met with the owners of the building. The restoration company we were working for could not get a flight out on that particular day because of storms. So she met with them and started going over the job and getting it ready to get started. There was 350 condos in this complex, and they're saying about half of it or less on the pictures at this time. The one on the left is 7 stories high, and the one on the right over there is a little shorter than that. But we had to clean it inside and out from top to bottom, all the contents, all the air conditioning systems and everything. And we were told that we had 7 days to get the entire project complete, because they were fully sold out in 7 days from the date we looked at it. So about 350 people, and then include subcontractors and air conditioning people and other stuff like that. Probably 550 people worked pretty much around the clock to complete the project. We completed it with the client we were working for in 5 days. So was running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is always a good thing. $2.2 million for the cleaning on it, and they were back in business and ready to go. So limited parking, as you can see. We're parked on a suspended parking garage, so we had a little bit of trouble parking. Had to get the city's permission to block a street and do some other things around through there and get that done. We had a little problem with cold weather, trying to do the pressure washing on the outside. So it's a little bit of a challenge. We had to be selective about when we done that. And then, of course, you had water falling down onto the aprons and to the other part that we had to worry about with that cold weather. And also was 200 and something feet up in the air on those lifts. So that created a little bit of a challenge. Also, this is Bridgestone Firestone's old corporate headquarters. They're a little bit bigger than that now, but this job started from a water pipe break on the 4th floor, and the way the building was designed, water actually filled up to those concrete ledges on the floor and ran out through the windows. So very, very major flood there. We were working for a contractor out of Nashville, Tennessee on this one, and the head man at Bridgestone Firestone's mitigation division had given us 14 days to complete the job and have them back in their office. So time constraints were very, very strict. Money did not seem to be an object. Just get the building back in order. So to do projects like that on tight time constraints, you just got to have a really good plan put together, and a little bit of luck, but a lot of effort and a backup plan for the plans that you do have. But there are a lot of big projects like that out there. This is a project that started off small. This is a ski complex in Kirkwood, California, where they held the Winter Olympics several years ago for the ski courses there. And the entire city of Kirkwood runs off generators. They don't have the power grid up there. They're so far up in the mountains. So electricity was always a big concern. Electricity was extremely expensive because they're running on a generator. So we had to worry about the power concerns with that. Of course, as you can see, all the snow, the temperatures are extremely cold, and I had to deal with that and extremely deep snow. So some of the challenge to deal with was that 70 miles to the closest town or the power grid, and lots of road closures due to avalanche warnings and stuff like that. Wound up being a really good job. Everything included $4.5 million, including the reconstruction, which the company I was working for was not part of. I just did the mitigation, but wound up being a really nice job to go in there, get everything dried out. I think it's actually from a fire in that very top peak up there where those stacks come out, and then the water ran down through the rest of the building pretty much. This is a gymnasium floor. The wood floor has been removed, and this project is to dry out the wood lath and the concrete that's there to get ready for new construction. The floor on this project had buckled pretty substantially, and drying in place was really not an option. So a very small job, small gymnasium, and didn't have a lot of complexities to it other than drying the concrete and getting it dry enough for the hardwood floor company to say, hey, it's dry enough that we can come in there and lay new flooring now. It's another hardwood floor in Arkansas. In this particular one, the contractor chose to dry the hardwood floor in place and not remove it. The floor was tinted with plastic, and air movers and injector drives were used underneath, and then desiccant air was piped in under the tent. They were playing basketball on this floor about 10 days after this photo was snapped. So the dry out was successful, and even though the floor had rippled fairly substantially, it did manage to lay back down and get in good enough shape they could play ball on it and continue on with their year. This is the Palace Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi. A fairly simple job. Water came into the first and second floor, which had to be demoed. It was seawater that came in. We're doing this for a construction company out of Texas. They'd also had water blow in through some of the windows and get the upper floors damp, not wet, but damp. They had some unique circumstances on this one. Getting to the area was one of them. One of the other circumstances was security of the building, it being a casino. And the casino and or the insurance company, one or the other, had hired an indoor air quality person to dictate when the building was dry. Their dictation of a dry building was to have 40% relative humidity sustained in the building for 48 hours in a row. They had, I think, 5 deskants running throughout the hallways of the floors in the building. And they had all the doors closed with air conditioning running in the rooms. So every morning about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, you'd reach dew point in the hallways and the hallway would rain out and totally wet all the hallways again. And they did that for 32 days before they decided to listen to what we had been telling them about what it needed done to get it dry. And they finally decided to try that since nothing else was working. And they tried that, and 3 days later, we had reached their goal that they wanted to reach and was able to leave. Sometimes you'll be asked to do crazy stuff, and you just have to document it, and make the right recommendations to get the job done. This is one of the many buildings that we've done at the Christmas Day bombing in Nashville, Tennessee. The bomb was on the other side of this building on a different street, and it blew all the windows in the building out front and back. On the upper levels, this level is actually below the basement level on First Street down below it. But we had to stabilize the moisture in that building and get any moisture that was in it from the sprinklers going off or other pipes going off and stuff like that, and to get it out of there to get the building dry. So we did 7 buildings in a row here, and this is on one of the buildings that we done. Had to deal with all the contents. The particularly difficult part about this job was dealing with federal, state, and local agencies. Had the bomb squad, you had the FBI, you had TBI, all kind of federal agencies crawling over this. They wouldn't let you get in the building to do your work. We even had trouble at some points driving down the street to fuel the equipment. They didn't want anybody in the area, and so it took a lot of politicking and working to get that done. The National Guard was there, so because of the nature of the bombing, it was pretty high security that we had to be able to get in there and do the work on these buildings. It hindered the drying process for several weeks because of the limited access we had and what they would allow us to do and the people they would allow us to have in and stuff such as that. So made it go slow, but you just, again, good documentation. Document what all you're having to do and why you're having to do it, and make sure you keep up with all that. And remember, at the end of the day, you're still working for the building owner. So when things change or you get delayed, you need to go through them, advise them on what's happening, and get instructions from them when stuff's happening out of your control. This is another relatively small job, even though it's a big building. This is a Best Buy in Hammond, Louisiana. It got wind-driven rain blown into about half of the store through the front doors, and mostly on the floor, and moisture in the contents and soaked up into cardboard displays and stuff like that. Just on this particular job, I had one desk for 5 or 6 days and got everything in there to normal content. If you do the scientific math, this store would need about 5 or 6 deskants on it. But when you put the common sense in with the science, and it's just 4 concrete block walls and a concrete floor with contents in it, it's really more like a humidity control job than it is a drying job. So just need to put it in perspective, and again, document everything with scientific facts, and psychometric readings will tell you all day long what the one deskant was doing was good and that more were not needed, and was able to get this store reopened in just a few days. This is the Pinnacle building in downtown Nashville. It's one of the largest buildings there. It's recognizable by the glass top around it. Biggest situation on this particular job was limited access at the street level. As you can see, we were allowed to block one side of the street, but not both. We had air conditioners and DHDH units stacked 3 high. You can see some of those in the picture 2 high, some are 3 high, and it was really difficult to get everything in there. The building on the right where the forklift is not part of that property, although it attaches to it. But the construction company there was nice enough to give us that 1 lane there at the corner to put equipment in, and they got by without that till we was there. Extremely difficult job. The building's 40 or 50 floors tall. It had water inundated into the bottom 2 floors. That had to be had to have demolition done on those 2 floors, and the contractor we're working for done that. And then the other 30 or 40 floors just had to have moisture stabilization because all of the HVAC systems and the heat systems went underwater and were not operational. So we had to keep control on the building till they got that back working. This is a federal courthouse in Nashville. We did for actually a carpet cleaning company. And someone, I don't know who, I'd like to send him a check, but someone had given all the federal judges in this building a water purification system to install under their bathroom sinks in the judges' chambers. And several of the judges tried to install the water purification system or the water filter by themselves. It resulted in 3 or 4 water damages there within a few months of getting that. And each time it seemed to happen on the weekend, and we go back and do the same thing. Once again, security was high on this job because of being a federal courthouse, but we performed multiple jobs there, so it's something as small as a water line going to a water filter, can cause a lot of damage. When you're hiring an equipment company or a subcontractor to come out and help you on a job, make sure they're working for you and they're not go around behind you and try to be your contractor. Make sure that you've got that agreement or arrangement set up with them, beforehand, before you get into that, and that you can have a good agreement with them for that in place, because if you don't, you could have some problems trying to get the equipment into the jobs and get it set up. You could have problems with the subcontractor you bring in actually trying to become the contractor. So just keep your eye open for that and have good agreements with people weeks and months before you need them, not when you're standing out on the sidewalk. Some of your equipment needs you're going to need on these jobs are desk dehumidifiers, air movers, generators, distribution. DXDH is just a myriad of different equipment that you need to have suppliers lined up for. We're glad to come out and help any company at any time with anything they got. Be glad to jump in or on and get your equipment over there that you need and come out and help you with anything that you need done. So get that alliance lined up. Once you line it up with one subcontractor, do it again with a different one, so you have a plan in place in case something falls through. I hope this has been helpful today on talking about some large jobs and some small jobs. Again, you just sort of need to be lined up to be able to do both of them at any time you want to, and to have those agreements in place with people long before the job comes around, and don't try to do it on the sidewalk in the middle of the night. So hope y'all have enjoyed this. Have a good rest of the